Hey folks, last time I showed you how to use these metal card blanks here and a diamond drag bit to create some really interesting business card pieces. This time what we're going to do is we're going to create a holder for these business cards, much like these. These were made out of maple and they fit your cards inside just like that. They're a fairly simple build. The material you want is going to be about 1/4 of an inch thick or less. So this time we're going to use this piece of zebra wood here. This is about 0.22 inches thick and about 7.5 by 10. We're going to probably make about 3 out of this. So let's go back to the design table and show you how these get set up. Okay, so I've set up our work area to match roughly the size of our piece of zebra wood here. And we're going to start out by drawing a rectangle roughly the size of a business card. Standard business card is about 2 inches by 3.5 inches. So 2, and I'm going to make this just slightly bigger, by 3.5, just slightly bigger. Okay, so now this is going to be the pocket where our business cards will fit, right? And now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to go with our offset path. And I'm just going to give us 1/8 of an inch on every side to the outside, and bang. Okay, so now we've got our inner and our outer wall. Now the one thing you'll notice right now is if we were to cut this as a shape, it would be enclosed completely. We don't really want that. We want this top piece open. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go ahead and make it slightly bigger. Alright, so now it's a little longer, and I want to get this up to where I've got exactly 1/8 of an inch. The easiest way I know to do that is to go ahead and make myself a quick little 1/8 of an inch cube. So, like this, 125, 125, cool. Now I can grab this from the midpoint, drag it down into here, and I can come in and do my alignments. Let's say that's aligned, and now I want to align this guy with this guy. So he's aligned, and we'll do that. Cool. And now I just need to make sure these guys are centered. Alright, so now those are centered, and I know I've got 1/8 of an inch right there. Let's reset our view. Cool, that looks good. This will give us a path that opens everything up at the top. Zoom in and get rid of this little guy. Alright. So now we've got enough room to do, unfortunately we don't have enough room to do 6. We've only got enough room to do 4 sides. So we'll do 2 up of these. And I'm just going to grab these, group them, copy, paste. So now we need to define our tool paths, right? And we're going to cut out around this one, and then we're going to pocket this one. And then these two will form a clamshell piece that we can glue together. Now, one thing to think of with this is when you're doing your tool paths, let's suppose you do this normally where you do your pocket piece and then you do your cutout as your final piece, which is normally the way you would do these kinds of things, right? If you do this cutout as your second operation, you're going to have this little thin piece of wood right here, and when that bit comes up and around, it's going to snap that off clean. Same on this side. So in this case, in this one case, we actually want to do our cutout before we do our pocket. So we're going to go ahead and select those pieces first. And we're going to do our cutout outside, stock bottom. And I'm going with my 1/4 inch end mill. If I can find it, there it is. Okay, And we definitely want some tabs. So let's see, I'm going to put tabs. Alright, so that's got those. I set these to 5 just on general principles. Alright, and this is our cutout. Now, once we've got our cutout, we're going to go ahead and cut this pocket. And you notice that the pocket, when it comes around, it's cutting upward right here, so it's less likely to knock these little pieces off. So let's go ahead and select those guys. And we're going to pocket those. And since our piece of wood is 0.22, we're going to go ahead and leave ourselves, let's go ahead and just do a half of that. So let's do, I'm going to do 1/2. Let's go ahead and do 1/2. That'll leave us 1/10 of an inch of material for thickness, and that should be fine. And we'll go ahead and just call this pocket. Boom. Alright, so now we've got that saved, and we should be ready to go ahead and cut. Save our G-code and we're done. Alright, so this looks good. We got our nice pocket here. We got our walls. They're still all intact, which is good. Didn't knock off the edges on any of them. We're just going to take this over to the bandsaw and go ahead and cut the rest of it out, get rid of the tabs and stuff. Okay, so here's our 4 basic pieces. Done just a little bit of minor cleanup on them. We'll probably do some more cleanup before we glue them together. And then once we glue them together, we'll do a final cleanup pass on them and then do some finishing. So these 2 pieces essentially fit together like clamshells and give us enough space to go ahead and slide our business cards in. So let's go ahead and finish the cleanup and do some gluing. Okay, so we got these set up now, cleaned up a bit. We don't want a lot of glue on this because if it squeezes into the inside, it's going to kind of keep us from putting our cards all the way down. So just a thin bit of glue. I use a Tight Bond Original. This stuff's got really good holding power. You'll probably break the wood before you actually break the glue. And again, we don't want glue down in there. So just a little bit of that. All right. Okay, and then we're going to line these guys up. Now we're going to get some squeeze out, and I'll show you how to get rid of that after these have dried a little bit. But we want to make sure first that our ends are aligned and that our sides are aligned. And we're going to clamp these using these big guys. Okay, so that's got the back end. You should be able to look in and see that those are aligned, right? And I'm just gonna clamp that one. And clamp that one. All right. Use your fingers just to kind of make sure that you've got that edge lined up right. Better to do it now than later. All right, and let's do our second one. Okay, and we're going to give those about a half hour to dry and come back and check on them. So after these have had a chance to dry a little bit, I like to try and get some of the last of the squeeze out that may be inside. To do that, I go ahead and take a stick and glue some 120 grit paper to it and trim it down just so that it's enough to be able to get good contact inside all the way down on those. And that'll make sure that any of that glue squeeze out that's in there is out of the way. So now if you want with something like this, you can go ahead and sand these to finish. But for the most part, I like using something like this. This is a Lee Nielsen apron plane, and it is one of the tools that I reach for almost every single day when I'm doing woodworking. This thing is marvelous for getting the edges on stuff like this right and rounding them over, and I'll show you how that's done. So I've got this locked up in the vise now, and I'm just going to come in with this plane and give it a couple of quick passes with this. And flip that around. See if I get a better. Yeah, that's a little bit nicer. And you see it just pulls these nice, wonderful little shavings off. And it leaves just a smooth as glass finish on that. So now I flip it over and do the other side. You don't have to place a lot of downward pressure on it. Let the tool do the cutting. And again, that's like glass. And lastly, I'll do this end grain. It's important with the end grain, you notice it's rounded over here, and that's a good thing for us because as I'm coming across with that tool, it's going to want to knock out the edges if I'm not careful with it. So light passes on this. Okay. Yeah. And just use your finger as a gauge because it'll tell you when it's flat. Okay, and that looks pretty good for right now. And then we're going to go ahead and round these edges over. Now with rounding the edges on something like this, it's just a matter of you're going to keep this blade at about a 45-degree angle. Okay, about 10 strokes, and then you're going to kind of ease it a little bit this way, and ease it a little bit this way. And that'll give you kind of a nice rounded edge to that. Just ease that edge a little bit. We're going to do the same thing on every side then. And count your strokes if you can remember, because that way you'll get a fairly even edge. And now that we've got those rounded over on the long ways, we'll go ahead and tackle this end grain. Okay, And that's got a much nicer profile now. We may do some final sanding on the top and bottom just to see, and then we'll go ahead and throw some finish on it.